You're green. I am.
Welcome to Hollywood Impact. My name is Christian. This is Nehemiah, and it's been a while since we've done something like this. The last one that we did was Transformers 1.
Oh, geez.
That was a while ago.
Wasn't that like beginning of October?
Something
or
like that.
End of September?
It was like September.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dang. Wow. Well, welcome back. So today we're talking about the new Wicked movie, which is based off a musical. I'm not sure if it's a straight one-for-one. I've not seen the musical, but with this film, because it recently came out like a week or so ago, we're a little bit late to the party, but we're going to try to break this down into 5 categories, which goes performances, story, music, cinematography, and the impact. And so we're going to start with the performances. I wasn't sure how Ariana was going to fit into this movie. When I first saw the trailer, I was like, I don't know. She doesn't seem like the really good. Well, it's a different story. I don't know much about it except for the fact that it took, more of the point of view of the Wicked Witch of the West and like her origin and how she was never really that bad. She just kind of came into that sort of role.
She was bad to everybody else.
And Cynthia Ervo, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. She's great.
Yeah.
She was really good. She sold the performance so well. She's probably the strongest character in the movie. She sings super, super well. But I like the demeanor that her character had through the story. It really kind of helped draw me in because she was so much different than everyone else, and not just like the obvious things, but like the way her character acts and perceives the world was so much different. Like it felt like she was trapped in High School Musical, but she was never a part of that. And that was kind of a cool dynamic to show. What do you think about Jeff Goldblum's character? Him as the Wizard of Oz.
I wasn't ready for him to sing like Mr. Rogers. Man, I was not ready for that. He started singing. I just thought, okay, that's different. I don't think it was awful. He played if you take into account the original Wizard of Oz, the original wizard, he kind of acted the same way, where he's just kind of slow with his words. He thought a lot. He kind of stumbled around, and he was asking a lot more questions than actually answering, because that's his character.
Yeah.
As for Goldblum and his character, I had no problem. I thought it fit fairly well. I was a little iffy at first because he's always this, from the movies I remember, he's a suave kind of, I'm the it man kind of guy. And in this one, he was the it man, but just in a different way.
I feel like his performance, I think in this movie, and it's just because probably this is part 1 of 2, was a little underwhelming, because I was kind of expecting him to be like a really big character, which he was. There's like a lot of mystique surrounding his character, which is really cool. But when it got down to actually meeting him and seeing him, it wasn't like this groundbreaking, breathtaking performance that I was expecting, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it seemed more like he was playing himself just in this character.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. I love him as an actor, but I think that this role could have been filled by other people, and it wouldn't have been that much different. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is the story. This movie's long. It's
a musical.
I get it. It's a musical. There's a lot of long musicals out there. That's kind of their nature. But when you're competing with other films, and when you're if you're trying to bring this movie to an audience of people who haven't seen the play, who don't usually see plays, who usually go to the theater to watch 2-hour films or less films, then this is going to be a long movie. Thankfully, it didn't feel 2 hours and 45 like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It felt more like 2:20, 2.5, which is good, but it was still long. And it's part 1. I'm sitting here thinking I have to do this again. And the second one might be even longer. And I'm like, dang. So that part was just but it's serviceable. It fits its role with what it promised. It is a musical, and I felt like there were a couple of unanswered questions. And for a lot of the Wicked fans out there, I've not seen the play, I've not seen any of the story. So from my perspective, just from experiencing this for the first time, there's like this conflict going on between the people and the animals, which is not explained. And I don't really understand that. They didn't make it clear. The characters tried to ask, like, hey, why are you doing this? And there's just no answer. So maybe we'll get that in the second one. And perhaps I'm just being stupid and just, haven't seen the second part of the musical or whatever. And so I should just know. But I don't. And so as a first-time viewer, that's weird. And that was like, okay, well, why should I believe that this big bad thing is happening if I don't understand any of the motivation behind it? Like, there was like a very vague mention of a motivation, and then it was just kind of brushed off.
We all know the Wicked Witch is allergic to water.
Yeah.
Or allergic. Right. She died to water.
Yeah.
And again, I haven't seen the part 2 of the musical, so we're both in the dark here. Yeah, so you can be screaming on the other side. We're not going to know.
Yeah, that's fine. And we're not going to care. Sorry.
It's like, because she hands her the umbrella and she's like, we won't want you to get wet. It's like, when did we figure out she was allergic to water?
Like, yeah, I guess.
It was just, and then I guess we see her hopping across that little pond part and she's not falling in, but it's just like, no one wants to fall in.
Yeah, and the first part of the film, whenever it opens up, it's like, oh, yeah, she, just like in the Wizard of Oz, she was killed with water. And it's like, well, okay. Like, I guess that's a thing. I guess I just didn't remember that or something. Or I guess that's an important element for some reason.
There's so many things that were left untold, and I bet once we get to the second part, it'll show everything. But until then, it was kind of an unsatisfying movie at times.
Part 1s are a little bit difficult to usually follow. Like the Hunger Games, part 1 is a very strange movie. I like it. I like all their movies. But part 2 is so much better. Usually part 2s in 2-part films, the second part is usually the part that people really want to see. That's the climax. That's when things really start to happen. The first one's the build-up, and the build-up is not for everyone. Going on to the next category is the music. The music. What did you think about the music?
I enjoyed the harmony. It was both of those singers. I mean, Ariana Grande, obviously, she is definitely in the soprano range. I mean, there is no doubt about it with all of what she's done in the past and now. There's no doubt that she fit Glinda, and especially whenever it came to her switching from her. I mean, we got to see it in the movie, which I absolutely loved, as we got to hear a little bit of what she's using now, a little bit of her pop voice at times. Yeah. But then, like, whenever the students are following her in to the door and they're like, oh, you're so wonderful, she turns around and she starts doing her like Snow White routine. That is a beautiful showing of just classical musical theater with that voice.
There's some great choreography in this movie. Like, everything was just on beat. And there was nothing that struck me as out of place. Like, the music was really well put together, and the direction, like the way it was shot, the way people moved, what they were doing during the songs was actually really interesting, because it was interesting not just hearing the song but seeing the people and what they're doing when the song is
getting
playing.
A little context before context of why the song's being, because I've had it's been on TikTok everywhere. Any video you've seen, the song Popular. I did not know that was a Wicked song until I saw it, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Okay, there's a little bit of context. And it was just a fun song, too.
It was. Ironically, it's my least favorite song in the movie.
Definitely not my favorite, but
it was interesting. There's a lot of interesting stuff. And, like, I mean, Cynthia Ervo, her singing ability is just insane. Just so good. And Ariana, obviously, she can sing 7 octaves or whatever. But, like, her really good strength is those soprano ranges, those higher ranges. She's almost flawless at doing that. It's incredible what she can do. Just incredible stuff. So the music it lives up to the hype. It's outstanding. There's a few songs where I was like, okay, it wasn't my favorite, but some of the good songs are so good,
dancing with it,
that it makes up for some of those lesser songs. So I think there's a lot to love in here. As people who like music, you're more involved in the music world, whereas I just like Spotify. So I mean, but I really enjoyed the music. It was really good. Moving on to the fourth category, which is cinematography, the direction. I personally feel like It was really well done. There was not a lot of CGI I thought was out of place. Obviously, there's a lot of animals, and the CGI is pretty standard for modern. It wasn't anything worth writing home about. I heard that they did a lot of their own stunts, which is pretty cool. That definitely gives them points. But I think that it didn't do anything groundbreaking. There was one thing that I want to pick out in particular that sort of threw me off, and that was the lighting. There was a few times, and I get that it's a musical, I don't know if they're going for realism, there was a few times where they're singing and dancing or they're doing whatever, and I get, once again, if they're going for realism or whatever, will they'll like be in the sun or the sun shining through like a window, and it's so bright that you almost can't see certain people, and like the natural sunlight, and I was like, that's a little jarring. Like there was a song in the library where the guy, can't remember his name, like Fierro or something like that, he's singing.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, he's singing because he's like the bad boy. And
then there's Guy Fiero.
Yeah,
because that's how I remember him.
He starts going towards a window, and you start to lose sight of his face because of the lighting from the window. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, I know it's not a huge deal, but it's something where I'm like, I think they could have done that better. And with all the modern technology and the budget and whatever, the production behind this movie, the production value is so good. The settings, the world building, all that stuff, so cool. But that little mistake was like something I, for some reason, just can't unsee.
There's only truly one part that I remember that I was just like, wow, that was done insanely good. And that was like the very last act, the very last song, Defying Gravity. And whenever she actually when she was falling through the sky, like at first it was kind of like, okay, that's okay looking at her reflection, but whenever she actually took off flying and how they made the cape move, and even at the very end, whenever it's like her final stand while she's in the sky, and how the cape somehow got bigger.
Yeah,
because she's showing.
That is true.
Yeah, she's showing everybody like, "Hey, I'm the Wicked Witch of the West now. Ain't nobody's gonna bother me. Ain't nobody's gonna stop me. Y'all can fear me."
But we got one more category to go before we get to the final verdict, and that is the impact. So this is kind of a personal one because we are Hollywood Impact, and so this is more along the lines of what its lasting effects are on the audience. Is it something you want to rewatch? Is it something where like you're going to be listening to the songs for the rest of your life? Like, how impactful is this movie going to be with us and future audiences for those of you who haven't seen it? All that stuff. I put all that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and start this last category. Culturally, there's going to be, I'm sure it's already made a bunch of money. Haven't looked at the numbers yet, but there's going to be a big following for this movie. It's one of the biggest musicals of all time, and rightly so. It is very cool, very neat. However, that being said, I don't see myself rewatching this. Even as someone who likes music and likes some musicals I've seen like on Disney Plus or things of that nature, like I would rather watch Alexander Hamilton than Wicked. And it's nothing really against Wicked. It may just be the nature and the story of which it tells. But like it's still good, but I perceive this having a huge cultural impact on the people who already love this film, as well as it's probably going to win some Oscars. I mean, come on. It's like the biggest musical of the year. It's like one of the biggest events of the year. Yeah. It's definitely going to be a shoe-in for some sort of Oscar. But is it going to win over all the new audiences? Is it going to win over people like you and I who've never seen the original play?
Yeah.
Maybe. There's a chance. It has a fair chance, but not everybody. Yeah. And so I think because of that, I have to mark it down just a little bit because it is very cool. I'm glad it was made. It was a worthy product. But I think that I'm there's going to end up being a point in time where I'm going to forget about this movie eventually. It's fine. It's serviceable. It's great for the people who already love this stuff. For the new people, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. It probably it has a good chance at an Oscar. Yeah. Especially...
I think so.
But then again, at least for me, I just didn't feel, it's not one of those that I feel the need to go back and watch.
Yeah, agreed.
If I was told, hey, we're going to watch this, and it was with a good group of friends, I'd say, okay, yeah, that's fine. But by myself, or if it was my choice, it wouldn't be the first pick at all.
I ain't gonna do it. Sorry.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the final verdict, the final score. What are you giving it?
I think I'm going to give it a 6.5.
6.5?
Yeah.
That's lower. That's way lower than I was expecting you to go. I mean, I get it, but like, that's pretty low.
And I guess if we're going to include the music, there wasn't as many songs as I thought. At least for this part one, there wasn't as many songs as I thought. I love songs. I know I didn't mention this during the song part.
You go ahead.
And this is also I've heard the songs before actually going to see
it's not a spoiler.
Yeah. And so, you have the final scene, her final high note that's like she's defying gravity.
Yeah.
She is floating. So it's like
and then
but
chorus or the choir.
It's just like wow. And I am not a fan of fancy riffs. I don't like the runs on things. I think it ruins the impact of a song. So whenever it went from that to her doing the ooh, whoa,
the ups and downs.
Are you stumbling in the air? Are you not sure you can fly?
Yeah, so
it
like,
just kind of ruined it for me.
So for you, it's like more of like a literal thing. Like you want the music and the way the song is presented to represent what is happening to the character.
Exactly. Yes.
I get that. That kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So
and
I
so
understand.
it like lost. And yes, it was still a powerful note.
Oh, it's still really cool.
No, total respect to her. No way I could do that.
Yeah, we can do
with
that.
Vocal range and just talent. But as the impact of the song, and for a song that is so impactful in the musical community, that note just ruined it for me.
It is the song of that musical. It is the song.
I get your own creativity with it whenever it's your part.
Yeah, you kind of make it your own.
Sometimes there are things you don't change something that's good.
Fair.
You don't change something that's good. If it doesn't need fixing, don't fix it.
I understand. Time for my score. I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay.
I like this movie. It's a good movie. Because looking through all the notes that I had, there were some things I marked it down for, but it's not enough to go under what I think is a solid film. Like, this is a good film. Is it my type of film? Not really. Yeah. If I judge this based on just against other musicals, I'd give it a higher score. I'd give it like an 8, 8.5, because there's a lot of musicals that are way worse than this movie. This movie's pretty good on a musical standpoint. But as a film critic, having this compared to other films I've seen this year, I have to give it a 7.5 because it doesn't stand up to things like Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
And things like that. Like some of the the Fall Guy, or shows The Penguin. There are things I've seen this year that I would rather rewatch 5 or 6 times before I'd rewatch this movie. And even though that doesn't take away from how good this movie is,
yes, exactly.
It's something that you have to understand is I'm giving it a 7.5, not because I think the movie's bad, but because it's solid. It's really good in its own category, especially. But when you put it in a theater against other films, and your own, and again, it has to go into preferences too. Yeah, it's like just your own. You can't help but compare, especially. And I mean, that's a big thing with our channel. While we will go into the categories, it is a movie overall. It is just a movie. It is a movie, so it's just compared to other things. It doesn't compare. I'm paying cash to go watch a movie in a theater. Yep. Would I do that for this movie a second time? And the answer is probably not. I would maybe if like my wife and you and like a handful of friends said, let's go see it again and let's talk about it. I'm good with that. Yeah. But unless I have a specific reason like that, I'm never going to think about watching this movie again until it comes out in streaming. And then maybe, I'll just have it on in the background. Just for the and if I want to, I just could listen to the music on Spotify. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of the way we think about it. Sorry if that's a hot take or if that's offensive, whatever. I don't care. It's just our opinion. Just
get ready for sitting down for a very long time. Make sure you move your legs.
There's a lot of moving parts in this movie.
Except you.
That's funny. Well, anyways, we're going to go and let you go. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. And of course, as always, we'll see you later.